London, 1805. She was abandoned and forgotten by her family, until a single mistake from the Duke transformed her life. Lady Rosalind Hartley had been invisible her entire life, the plain, bookish daughter her family left behind while they pursued London seasons and advantageous marriages. At 26, she lived alone in the crumbling Hartley country estate, managing what remained of the family finances, forgotten by everyone who mattered. Until the Duke of Winterbourne made a catastrophic error. He mistook her for a servant, offered her a position managing his household, and Rosalind, tired of being invisible, accepted without correcting him. For 6 months she lived as his housekeeper, transforming his chaotic estate while he remained oblivious to her true identity. Then the truth emerged, and everything Rosalind had built came crashing down in the most unexpected way possible. If stories like this move you, please subscribe to Velvet Tales. Every subscription helps us share more extraordinary tales of survival, second chances, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Your support means these incredible true stories reach hearts that need them most. Lady Rosalind Hartley stood in the dusty library of Hartley House, reviewing account books that revealed the family's financial collapse. Her father, the Earl of Hartley, had gambled away the fortune. Her mother had died when Rosalind was 12. Her 3 beautiful older sisters had married well and escaped to London, Paris, and Edinburgh, respectively. And Rosalind, plain, scholarly, utterly unmarriageable Rosalind, had been left behind to manage the ruins. She was 26 years old. She had not been to London in 8 years. Her sisters wrote occasionally, brief letters full of their own glamorous lives with no questions about hers. Her father had died 2 years ago, leaving debts that consumed everything except the entailed estate. Rosalind lived alone in the crumbling country house with 2 elderly servants the family could not afford to pension off. She managed the small remaining income from tenant farms, stretched every penny impossibly far, and accepted that this was her life, invisible, forgotten, abandoned by everyone who should have cared. She was reviewing the quarterly accounts when she heard a commotion outside, carriage wheels shouting, the sound of someone demanding entry. Mrs. Pearson, the housekeeper, appeared at the library door. "My lady, there is a gentleman here, very insistent. Says he has business with the Earl of Hartley. I told him the Earl passed 2 years ago, but he will not leave." "What kind of business?" "He did not say. But my lady, he is a duke, the Duke of Winterbourne. His carriage bears the family crest." Rosalind felt her stomach drop. "A duke, here, either demanding payment of debts or bringing news of more financial disaster." She followed Mrs. Pearson to the entrance hall, where a man stood examining the peeling wallpaper with visible distaste. He was tall, perhaps 30, with dark hair and darker eyes. Handsome in a severe, uncompromising way, he wore expensive clothes that made the shabby entrance hall look even more pathetic by comparison. "I am Lady Rosalind Hartley," she said, keeping her voice steady. "My father, the Earl of Hartley, died 2 years ago. If you have business with the estate, I manage it now." The Duke turned to look at her. His gaze swept over her. Plain grey dress, ink-stained fingers, hair pulled back in a simple knot. She saw his expression shift from expectation to dismissal in seconds. "You are the daughter. I was told the Earl had daughters who married well. Where are they?" "My sisters live elsewhere. As I said, I manage the estate. How may I help you, Your Grace?" "I am not here for you. I am looking for the Earl's estate manager. I have a proposal regarding adjacent lands." "I am the estate manager. There is no one else." The Duke's eyebrows rose. "You? A woman manages this estate?" "Yes, for the past 2 years, since my father's death. Your Grace, the Hartley estate is not what it once was, but I assure you I am competent. I am sure you are adequate for small household matters. But I need someone who understands complex land negotiations, financial planning, agricultural management. I will speak with whoever actually manages the business aspects." Rosalind felt familiar anger rise, the anger of being constantly underestimated, dismissed, assumed incompetent because of her gender. "Your Grace, I manage every aspect of this estate, the finances, the land, the tenants, everything. If you have business to discuss, you discuss it with me or not at all." The Duke studied her with something like amusement. "Very well. The lands adjacent to my estate, the eastern fields, were leased by your father 20 years ago. That lease expires next month. I wish to purchase the land outright. What price would the Hartley estate accept? Rosalind's mind raced. Those eastern fields were the most valuable remaining Hartley asset. Selling them would provide desperately needed capital, but would also permanently reduce the estate's income. May I ask why you wish to purchase rather than renew the lease, Your Grace? That is my business. Name your price. I need time to review the current market value, assess the long-term implications. I do not have time for lengthy deliberations. I need an answer within the week. Can you provide that, or should I wait until your sister's husbands can be consulted? The condescension was unbearable. Rosalind drew herself up. I can provide an answer within 3 days. Send your offer in writing to Hartley House. I will respond accordingly. Good day, Your Grace. She turned to leave, dismissing him from his own negotiation. Behind her, she heard him make a sound that might have been surprise or amusement. Wait, Lady Rosalind, was it? I may have another proposition, one that might benefit both of us. She turned back warily. What kind of proposition? My estate, Winterbourne Park, is in chaos. My previous housekeeper retired. My household staff is inefficient. My accounts are a disaster. I need someone competent to manage it. You clearly have experience managing an estate. I will pay you £50 per quarter, plus room and board. In exchange, you organize my household and make it functional. Rosalind stared at him. You are offering me a position? As your housekeeper? Yes. You said you manage this estate. If you can manage Hartley House with its obvious limitations, you can certainly manage Winterbourne Park with its considerably greater resources. Unless household management is beneath a lady. I was under the impression the Hartley family had fallen on difficult times. £50 quarterly would be useful income, would it not? He thought she was a poor relation, an impoverished lady reduced to managing the family estate out of necessity. He was offering her a servant's position because he assumed she needed the money. He was right about the money. £50 quarterly was more than the entire Hartley estate generated currently. It would allow her to stabilize the finances, make needed repairs, perhaps even hire proper staff. But accepting meant living as a servant, meant hiding her title, her identity, her place in society. Then again, what place in society did she actually have? She had been abandoned here for 8 years. No one in London knew or cared that Lady Rosalind Hartley existed. Her sisters never visited, never invited her to join them. She was already forgotten. What if she simply stayed forgotten? What if she took this position, earned the desperately needed income, and finally did something interesting with her life? I accept, she heard herself say. When would you need me to start? Immediately. Tomorrow, if possible. I am hosting a house party in 6 weeks. Important business associates, potential investors. The house must be ready. Can you do that? Yes. I will need complete authority over household staff and accounts. Granted. My steward will provide whatever information you require. Do you have references? Rosalind almost laughed. References from whom? The 2 elderly servants who worked for her because they had nowhere else to go. I have managed Hartley House successfully for 2 years with minimal staff and almost no budget. If I can do that, I assure you I can manage your estate. Fair enough, I will send a carriage tomorrow morning. Bring whatever belongings you need. You will have your own room, access to household accounts, full authority over staff. Your first task is to assess the current situation and provide me with a detailed plan for improvements. Understood, Your Grace. May I ask, what should I be called? If I am to be your housekeeper, surely not Lady Rosalind. What is your family name? Hartley. Then Mrs. Hartley will suffice. Unmarried women can use the courtesy title when in service. Does that suit you? Mrs. Hartley. A new identity. A fresh start. Freedom from being forgotten. Lady Rosalind, invisible and abandoned. Yes, Your Grace. That suits me perfectly. The Duke nodded, already turning to leave. Tomorrow morning, then. Do not be late. I do not tolerate inefficiency. After he left, Mrs. Pearson appeared, her expression horrified. My lady, you cannot seriously be considering this. Working as a servant? What would your mother say? What will your sisters think? My sisters will not know because they do not care enough to ask about my life. Mrs. Pearson, I have been trapped here for 8 years, invisible and forgotten. This is an opportunity to do something different. Earn real money. See beyond these walls. I am taking it. But my lady, if anyone discovers the truth, no one will discover it. I will be Mrs. Hartley, housekeeper. Lady Rosalind Hartley will remain here, forgotten as always. What does it matter? No one remembers I exist anyway. The next morning, Rosalind packed a small trunk, her plainest dresses, her most practical shoes, nothing that would reveal her actual status. She left instructions with Mrs. Pearson for managing the house in her absence, arranged for the quarterly accounts to be handled, and prepared to step into a completely new life. When the Duke's carriage arrived, she climbed in without looking back. Hartley House represented 26 years of being overlooked, undervalued, forgotten. Mrs. Hartley could be someone different, someone noticed, someone valued for her competence rather than dismissed for her appearance. Winterbourne Park was magnificent, 10 times the size of Hartley House, perfectly maintained grounds, an army of servants, and inside, chaos. Complete, absolute chaos. The butler who greeted Rosalind looked harassed. "You are the new housekeeper, thank God. This place has been a disaster since Mrs. Crawford retired. His Grace demands perfection but provides no direction. The staff is demoralized. The accounts are confused, and we are supposed to host a house party for 30 guests in 6 weeks. It is impossible." "Nothing is impossible, Mr. Pemberton. I am the butler, or I try to be. Without a competent housekeeper, maintaining standards has been difficult. Then let us restore those standards. Mr. Pemberton, I will need to meet with all senior staff, review all household accounts, inspect every room, and assess supply needs. Can you arrange that? Today? Immediately. We have 6 weeks. We cannot waste time." Over the following hours, Rosalind threw herself into understanding Winterbourne Park's operations. She met the staff, some competent but demoralized, others incompetent and defensive. She reviewed accounts that revealed shocking waste and inefficiency. She inspected rooms that were nominally clean but actually filthy in corners no one thought to check. By evening, she had a comprehensive plan. She requested a meeting with the Duke to present it. He received her in his study, barely looking up from papers. "Mrs. Hartley, have you assessed the situation?" "Yes, Your Grace. I have prepared a detailed analysis." She handed him a document, pages of notes, observations, recommendations. "Your household is inefficient in 14 specific areas. The staff is undertrained and poorly managed. The accounts have not been properly reconciled in months. Supply purchasing is done without competitive bidding, resulting in excessive costs. However, all of these problems are correctable within your 6-week time frame." The Duke looked up, surprise clear in his expression. "You prepared this today? This level of detail?" "Yes, Your Grace. You hired me to manage your household effectively. This is what effective management requires, understanding the current situation completely before implementing changes." He read through her report, his expression shifting from skepticism to interest. "These recommendations are sophisticated. You suggest restructuring the entire staff hierarchy. Because the current hierarchy is dysfunctional, you have too many people doing redundant work and not enough doing essential tasks. I can fix it, but I will need your complete support. Some staff will resist changes. You have my support. Any staff member who refuses to follow your direction will be dismissed. I need this house functional, Mrs. Hartley. Whatever you need to accomplish that, you have my authorization. Even if it means dismissing senior staff who have been here for years. Even then, competence matters more than tenure. If someone cannot perform their duties adequately, they should not be employed. Make whatever changes are necessary." Rosalind felt a thrill of power. For the first time in her life, she had real authority backed by substantial resources. She could implement ideas that had been impossible at impoverished Hartley House. She could prove what she was capable of when not constrained by poverty and dismissal. "Very well, Your Grace, I will begin immediately. You will see results within 2 weeks. I look forward to it. Mrs. Hartley, I will be honest. I hired you skeptically. I doubted a woman managing a failing estate would be capable of managing a successful one. I am pleased to be wrong. The casual sexism should have angered her. Instead, Rosalind felt satisfaction. He had underestimated her, and she would prove him wrong so thoroughly that he would never doubt her again. Over the following weeks, Rosalind transformed Winterbourne Park. She restructured staff assignments, implemented new purchasing procedures, trained inefficient servants, and dismissed those who refused to improve. She negotiated better supply contracts, reconciled the accounts, and established systems that would maintain efficiency long-term. The Duke watched this transformation with increasing respect. He began consulting her on matters beyond household management, estate finances, tenant relations, business decisions. He valued her opinion in ways no one ever had before, and Rosalind, forgotten invisible Lady Rosalind, thrived. For the first time in her life, she was seen, valued, respected for her mind and her competence. Yes, she was living as a servant, but she had more power as the Duke's trusted housekeeper than she had ever had as an invisible Earl's daughter. 6 weeks after her arrival, the house party began. 30 guests descended on Winterbourne Park. Wealthy investors, business associates, influential aristocrats. Everything had to be perfect. It was. Rooms were immaculate. Meals were served flawlessly. Entertainment was organized seamlessly. The guests praised the Duke's excellent household management, and the Duke praised Mrs. Hartley. Publicly in front of his guests, he said, "My housekeeper, Mrs. Hartley, has accomplished in 6 weeks what I thought impossible. She is extraordinarily competent." Rosalind, standing in her housekeeper's black dress with her keys at her waist, felt pride swell in her chest. She was being publicly recognized for her work. It should not matter that the recognition was for being a servant, but it did matter because it was real, because someone finally saw what she could do. Among the guests was Rosalind's eldest sister, Arabella, now Lady Pembroke. Rosalind saw her arrive and felt panic. Would Arabella recognize her? Would she expose the deception? But Arabella looked directly at her, at Mrs. Hartley, the competent housekeeper, and saw nothing. No recognition, no familiarity. Arabella had not seen Rosalind in 8 years, and apparently would not recognize her own sister standing 3 feet away. The invisibility that had hurt so much at Hartley House was now Rosalind's protection. Her own sister did not know her. That was how thoroughly she had been forgotten. During the house party, Rosalind overheard a conversation between Arabella and another guest. They were discussing the Hartley family. "Such a shame about the Hartley estate," the other woman said. "I heard the Earl gambled it all away." "Yes," Arabella said dismissively. "My father was a disaster. Thank God my sisters and I all married well and escaped. There was a 4th sister, Rosalind, I think, but she was plain and bookish, unmarriageable. I assume she is still at that crumbling house, managing whatever is left. I should write to her sometime, I suppose, but honestly, what would we have to say to each other? We were never close. The casual cruelty of it, I should write to her sometime, I suppose, made Rosalind's chest tighten. Her own sister could not be bothered to maintain contact, to check if she was alive, to care at all about her existence. And yet Arabella praised Mrs. Hartley's competence repeatedly during the party. She valued the housekeeper's work, while dismissing her actual sister as unmarriageable and forgettable. The irony was almost funny. Rosalind was more valued as a servant than she had ever been as a sister. After the house party ended successfully, the Duke summoned Rosalind to his study. "Mrs. Hartley, that was flawless. Every guest commented on the excellent household management. You have exceeded every expectation. I'm increasing your quarterly salary to £75 and giving you a bonus of £50 for the house party success." Rosalind felt tears threaten. £125. That was more than Hartley House generated in a year. With this money, she could make desperately needed repairs, ensure the elderly servants were cared for, stabilize everything. "Thank you, Your Grace. I am pleased the party met your standards. It surpassed them. Mrs. Hartley, I have a proposition. Stay permanently, not just as temporary help, but as my permanent housekeeper. I will pay you £100 quarterly, provide excellent accommodation, and give you authority over all household matters. I have learned to trust your judgment completely. I want you here long-term. Stay permanently. Never return to being forgotten, Lady Rosalind. Remain Mrs. Hartley, competent and valued. I accept, Your Grace. Though I should mention, I will need occasional leave to handle family business. I still oversee Hartley House remotely. Of course, you may have 1 week quarterly for personal matters. Does that suffice?" "Yes. Thank you, Your Grace." "Good. Now I have another matter. I am considering an investment opportunity, a shipping venture. I would value your opinion on the financial projections." He handed her documents, business papers, asking her opinion on major financial decisions, treating her as a trusted advisor, not just a servant. This was what Rosalind had always wanted, to be valued for her mind, to have her intelligence recognized, to be trusted with important responsibilities. She had never received it as Lady Rosalind, but as Mrs. Hartley, the Duke's housekeeper, she had all of it. Over the following months, Rosalind's role expanded beyond household management. The Duke consulted her on estate finances, business ventures, even tenant disputes. He valued her strategic thinking, her analytical mind, her practical wisdom. They spent hours together, reviewing accounts, discussing investments, debating agricultural strategies. The Duke treated her as an intellectual equal in ways no one ever had, and Rosalind found herself developing feelings she had not anticipated. The Duke was intelligent, driven, challenging. He made her think. He valued her opinions. He saw her in ways no one ever had. It was absurd. She was developing feelings for a man who employed her as his servant, who had no idea she was actually the daughter of an earl, a man who would be horrified if he learned the truth. But the feelings persisted. Every meeting, every conversation, every moment of being valued by him made them stronger. One evening they were working late in his study, reviewing quarterly accounts, discussing cost reductions. The Duke looked up from papers, studied her with unusual intensity. "Mrs. Hartley, may I ask you something personal?" Rosalind felt her heart rate increase. "Of course, Your Grace. You are extraordinarily intelligent, far more educated than most women I have met, regardless of class. Where did you receive your education?" "My mother believed in educating daughters equally. She ensured I had excellent tutors." "Your mother was progressive, and your husband, was he similarly progressive?" Rosalind had not prepared for questions about a fictional husband. "I am not married, Your Grace. Mrs. is a courtesy title for housekeepers." "Ah, I wondered. You seem young for such an experienced position. How old are you?" 26. 26. Managing an earl's estate at 24, now managing mine at 26. That is remarkable. Most women of your intelligence would be frustrated by the limitations society imposes. Are you frustrated, Mrs. Hartley?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "But Your Grace, you provide opportunities most employers would not. You consult me on business matters, value my opinions, treat me as more than just household staff. That is unusual and appreciated. Because you are unusually competent. Mrs. Hartley, I have a confession. When I first met you at Hartley House, I thought you were a poor relation playing at estate management. I hired you skeptically, expecting mediocre work. You have proven me wrong so thoroughly that I am embarrassed by my initial assumptions. You made assumptions based on gender. Most men do, I am accustomed to it. That does not make it acceptable. I apologize for underestimating you. You have taught me that competence is not determined by gender or class. You are the most capable estate manager I have employed, and I have employed many men who could not match your abilities." The compliment was intoxicating. Rosalind felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you, Your Grace. That means more than you know." They held eye contact for a moment too long. Rosalind saw something shift in his expression. Awareness, interest, something that made her breath catch. Then he looked away, back to his papers. "We should finish these accounts. I have an early meeting tomorrow." But something had changed. An acknowledgement hung between them, unspoken but present. Over the following weeks, the Duke sought Rosalind's company increasingly. He invited her to join him for evening tea, ostensibly to discuss household matters, but often diverging into philosophy, literature, politics. He asked her opinions on everything from agricultural techniques to investment strategies, and he looked at her differently. Not as an employer looks at a servant, but as a man looks at a woman he finds interesting. Rosalind knew she should be careful. She was lying to him about her identity, her status, everything. If he developed feelings for Mrs. Hartley, the deception would become even more complicated. But she could not stop the growing intimacy between them, could not stop looking forward to their evening conversations, could not stop the thrill she felt when he smiled at something she said. One evening, the Duke asked something unexpected. "Mrs. Hartley, do you have family, people who care about you?" Rosalind thought of her sisters, who never wrote, who could not recognize her when she stood in front of them. "No, Your Grace, not really. Neither do I. My parents died years ago. I have a sister, but we are not close. She finds me too serious, too focused on business. I find her frivolous. We barely speak. That must be lonely." "It is. But I have learned that loneliness in the absence of family is better than loneliness within family. Do you understand that?" "Yes. Rosalind said quietly. "I understand that perfectly. I thought you might." He poured more tea, his movements careful. "Mrs. Hartley, I want you to know I value you. Not just as an employee, though you are excellent at your work, but as a person, as someone whose company I enjoy, whose opinions I respect, whose presence makes this house feel less empty. You have become important to me in ways that are probably inappropriate given our respective positions." Rosalind's heart pounded. "Your Grace, I am not asking for anything. I know the boundaries between employer and employee. I know what society expects. But I needed you to know you matter to me. More than you should, perhaps, but you do." He stood abruptly as if regretting his confession. "Good night, Mrs. Hartley. Thank you for another productive conversation." He left before she could respond. Rosalind sat in his study, processing what had just happened. The Duke had essentially confessed feelings for her, for Mrs. Hartley, the housekeeper, not for Lady Rosalind, whom he had never met. What had she done? She had created a situation where the man she had feelings for cared about a person who did not really exist. Mrs. Hartley was a fiction. Lady Rosalind was real, but he would never know her. She should confess, tell him the truth, but that would mean losing everything: the position, the income Hartley House desperately needed, his respect, his whatever he felt for her. She said nothing, and the lie grew more complicated every day. 3 months into her employment, Rosalind received a letter forwarded from Hartley House. It was from Arabella, her eldest sister. The first letter in over a year. "Dear Rosalind, I hope this letter finds you well. I have been meaning to write for some time. I recently attended a house party at Winterbourne Park. The Duke's household management was impeccable. It made me think of you, managing that crumbling estate all alone. I feel I should mention there are rumours in London. Questions about where the remaining Hartley daughters are. People assume you married quietly or died. It creates awkward conversations. Perhaps you could visit London briefly. Let people see you are alive and well. It would be convenient for maintaining family reputation. Also, I may have found a potential suitor for you. Lord Ashford is 53, recently widowed, seeking a sensible wife to manage his household. He is not wealthy or handsome, but you are 26 and cannot afford to be choosy. Shall I arrange an introduction? Your sister, Arabella." Rosalind read the letter twice, fury building with each word. Arabella had not written in over a year. Now she wrote not to ask about Rosalind's well-being, but to complain about awkward conversations and suggest she marry a 53-year-old widower seeking unpaid household help. The casual cruelty of it, "You are 26 and cannot afford to be choosy," was breathtaking. Arabella did not care about Rosalind. She cared about family reputation and her own social convenience. Rosalind burned the letter. She wrote no response. Let Arabella wonder. Let London assume Lady Rosalind was dead. Mrs. Hartley was more alive than Lady Rosalind had ever been, but the letter reminded her of the deception. She was lying to the Duke, living a false identity. If he ever discovered the truth, that his trusted housekeeper was actually Lady Rosalind Hartley, daughter of the Earl whose estate he had visited, he would feel betrayed, manipulated. She should tell him. But how? "Your Grace, I am actually the daughter of an Earl whom you met and dismissed as incompetent. I have been lying to you for months." That would end everything. So she said nothing, and tried to ignore the growing guilt. The Duke continued seeking her company. Their evening conversations became daily occurrences. He consulted her on every major decision. He trusted her completely, and he was falling in love with her. Rosalind could see it. The way he looked at her, the way his voice softened when addressing her, the way he found excuses to be near her. She was falling in love with him too, with his intelligence, his integrity, his unexpected vulnerability when they talked late at night. He was lonely, just as she was. They had found something rare in each other. Genuine connection, intellectual partnership, the sense of being truly seen. But it was all built on a lie, and lies, however well-intentioned, eventually collapsed. The collapse began 6 months into her employment. The Duke's sister, Lady Henrietta, arrived for an extended visit. She was everything Rosalind's sisters were: beautiful, fashionable, concerned primarily with social matters. Lady Henrietta took immediate interest in the household's excellent management. She wanted to know everything about the remarkable Mrs. Hartley, who had transformed Winterbourne Park. "You are so young and so competent," Henrietta observed during tea. How did you come to be in service? Your education seems far above typical. My mother believed in education, Rosalind replied carefully. She ensured I had opportunities most women do not receive. But what family? Who was your mother? You speak like gentry, carry yourself like someone raised in aristocratic households. Were you? Lady Henrietta, my background is not relevant to my current position. But I am curious. My brother values you tremendously. He speaks of you constantly. I want to understand who you are. I am Mrs. Hartley, your brother's housekeeper. That is all that matters. But Henrietta was persistent. She asked servants about Mrs. Hartley's background. She investigated Hartley House, discovered that the Earl of Hartley had died 2 years ago, leaving a daughter who had mysteriously disappeared from society. One evening, Henrietta confronted Rosalind in the housekeeper's room. You are Lady Rosalind Hartley, daughter of the Earl. My brother met you at Hartley House 6 months ago. You have been lying to him this entire time. Rosalind felt ice flood her veins. Lady Henrietta, do not deny it. I confirmed it with inquiries in London. You are Lady Rosalind, and you have been masquerading as a servant. Why, what possible reason could you have for such deception? Because your brother offered me a position when he thought I was a poor relation. I accepted because I desperately needed the income. Hartley House is impoverished. I had no other options. So you lied. You let my brother develop feelings for someone who does not exist. Mrs. Hartley is a fiction. He cares about her, and she is not real. I am real. Everything he knows about me, my competence, my intelligence, my opinions, that is all real. Only my name and title were false. Only? Lady Rosalind, deception is deception. You have manipulated my brother, made him care for a servant who is actually his social equal. Do you have any idea how this will devastate him when he learns the truth? Rosalind felt tears threaten. I never meant to hurt him. I never meant for this to become complicated. I just wanted to be valued for my competence instead of dismissed for my appearance. And you are valued, but under false pretenses. Lady Rosalind, you must tell him. If he discovers this from anyone else, it will destroy whatever trust you have built. Will you tell him? Henrietta was quiet for a long moment. No, this is your deception. You must be the one to reveal it. But Lady Rosalind, if you do not tell him within the week, I will. He deserves the truth. After Henrietta left, Rosalind sat in the darkness of her small room trying to find courage. She had to tell the Duke. But how? How did you confess to 6 months of lies to a man who had come to trust you completely? The next evening she requested a meeting in his study. Her hands shook as she knocked on the door. Come in, Mrs. Hartley. What did you need to discuss? Your Grace, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you months ago. But I did not. And now it has become complicated and I do not know how to make it right. The Duke looked up, concern in his expression. What is wrong? Has something happened? Your Grace, do you remember the day we met? At Hartley House? You were looking for the Earl of Hartley to discuss land negotiations. Yes, I met his daughter, Lady Rosalind, I think. Plain woman, managing the estate. I offered her a position as housekeeper. Why? Rosalind took a deep breath. Because I am Lady Rosalind Hartley. I have been lying to you for 6 months. The Duke went very still. What? I am not Mrs. Hartley, a servant. I am Lady Rosalind Hartley, daughter of the Earl of Hartley. You met me 6 months ago and mistook me for a poor relation. You offered me a position, and I accepted without correcting your assumption. I have been living under a false identity this entire time. The Duke stood slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to comprehension to fury. You have been lying to me for 6 months, pretending to be a servant when you are actually titled. Yes, Your Grace, I can explain. Explain what? That you found it amusing to deceive me? That you enjoyed the game of playing servant while actually being my social equal? No, it was not a game. You offered me a position when you thought I was a poor relation. I needed the income desperately. Hartley House is impoverished. £50 quarterly was more money than I had seen in years. I accepted because I needed to survive. You could have told me the truth and asked for the position anyway. You did not need to lie. Would you have hired me if you knew I was Lady Rosalind, the woman you dismissed as incompetent when you first met me? You offered Mrs. Hartley a position because you thought she was a servant with nothing else. You would never have made the same offer to Lady Rosalind. The Duke's jaw tightened. You manipulated me, made me care about someone who does not exist. I exist. Everything you know about me is real. My competence, my intelligence, my opinions, all of it is real. Only my name was false. Only your name. Lady Rosalind, I have developed feelings for you, for Mrs. Hartley, my housekeeper. I have spent months consulting you, trusting you, valuing you, and it was all based on a lie. How can I trust anything about you when your very identity is false? Rosalind felt tears stream down her face. Because I am the same person. Mrs. Hartley and Lady Rosalind are the same person. I just finally had the opportunity to be valued for who I actually am, instead of dismissed for not being beautiful enough or marriageable enough. You lied to me for 6 months. That is not the action of someone trustworthy, regardless of their reasons. Then dismiss me. Send me back to Hartley House. But Your Grace, please understand, I have been abandoned and forgotten my entire life. My sisters left me to manage a crumbling estate alone. My family never writes, never visits, never cares if I am alive or dead. When you offered me this position, it was the first time anyone had valued me for something other than my marriage ability. I took it. Maybe that was wrong, but it was also the only choice I had. The Duke was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was cold. I need time to process this. You will remain in your position temporarily while I decide what to do. But Lady Rosalind, and I will call you that now since Mrs. Hartley apparently does not exist, do not expect my trust or my regard. You destroyed both through your deception. He dismissed her with a gesture. Rosalind fled to her room, collapsed on her bed, and cried harder than she had in years. She had finally been seen, valued, cared about, and she had destroyed it all through lies that had seemed necessary, but were ultimately devastating. Over the following days, the Duke avoided Rosalind completely. He communicated through Mr. Pemberton, issued instructions through written notes, refused all direct contact. Rosalind performed her duties mechanically, waiting for the inevitable dismissal. She had no idea what she would do when it came. Return to Hartley House, accept Arabella's offer to marry the 53-year-old widower. She had no options, no resources, no hope. Lady Henrietta sought her out one afternoon. He is devastated. He truly cared for you, for Mrs. Hartley, and learning it was all deception has shattered something in him. It was not all deception. Only my name. Everything else was real. But the name matters, Lady Rosalind. You lied about your fundamental identity. That calls everything else into question, whether fairly or not. My brother feels manipulated. He feels foolish for developing feelings for someone who was deceiving him. I never meant to hurt him. I never meant for him to develop feelings. This was supposed to be temporary employment, nothing more. But it became more. And now you must deal with the consequences. Lady Rosalind, what did you hope would happen? That you could maintain this lie indefinitely? That he would never discover the truth? I do not know. I was not thinking long term. I was just trying to survive, to be valued for once in my life. It felt so good to be seen, Henrietta. To have someone respect my intelligence, trust my judgment, value my presence. I had never experienced that as Lady Rosalind, only as Mrs. Hartley. Because you were hiding, Lady Rosalind was abandoned and forgotten, yes. But you never fought to be seen. You accepted invisibility. Then you created a false identity that allowed you to be visible. That is not growth, Lady Rosalind. That is avoidance. The words stung because they were true. Rosalind had accepted abandonment instead of demanding recognition. She had hidden behind Mrs. Hartley instead of insisting that Lady Rosalind deserved respect. What do I do now? Rosalind asked. How do I fix this? I do not know if you can. My brother is proud. He feels humiliated by being deceived. That is difficult to overcome. But Lady Rosalind, if you truly care about him, you will be honest from here forward. No more lies, no more deception. Just truth, even when truth is uncomfortable. 1 week after the revelation, the Duke summoned Rosalind to his study. She went expecting dismissal. Instead, he handed her a document. I have been investigating. Your financial situation is as dire as you claimed. Hartley House generates almost no income. You have been managing on impossibly little. The position I offered was genuinely necessary for your survival. Yes, Your Grace. That does not excuse the lie, but it explains it. Lady Rosalind, I am trying to understand. Why did you accept being Mrs. Hartley instead of negotiating honestly as Lady Rosalind? Because you never would have hired Lady Rosalind. When you met me at Hartley House, you dismissed me as incompetent within minutes. You asked to speak to the real manager because you could not believe a woman could handle estate business. You only offered Mrs. Hartley a position because you thought she was a poor relation with no other options. You would never have extended the same opportunity to Lady Rosalind. Perhaps you are right, I was dismissive. I underestimated you based on gender and status. That was wrong. But Lady Rosalind, deception is not the answer to discrimination. You should have confronted my bias, not worked around it through lies. Easy to say from your position of power. Your Grace, you have never been dismissed because of your gender. Never had your competence questioned before you even spoke. Never been invisible despite being qualified. When someone finally sees you, even if they only see a false version, it feels miraculous. I took the miracle even though it was based on a lie. The Duke was quiet. Then he said something unexpected. I understand that, more than you might think. Lady Rosalind, my parents died when I was 22. I inherited the dukedom young, unprepared. Many people assumed I would fail. They treated me as an inexperienced boy playing at being Duke. I wanted to prove them wrong so desperately that I became harsh, demanding, unwilling to show any weakness. I built a reputation for being cold and uncompromising because I thought that was the only way to be taken seriously. And it worked. You are respected. I am feared. That is different. Lady Rosalind, I built walls to protect myself from being underestimated. You built a false identity for the same reason. We both hid our true selves because we thought our true selves would not be valued. That is sad. Yes, it is. So now what? Do we continue hiding? Or do we try being honest even if honesty is harder? Rosalind looked at him directly. I want to be honest. Your Grace, the truth is, I am Lady Rosalind Hartley. I am 26 years old. I have been managing a failing estate for 2 years because my family abandoned me there. I am intelligent, competent, and deeply lonely. I took this position because I needed the money, yes, but also because I wanted to be valued for something other than my marriage ability. And I developed feelings for you that were entirely inappropriate but completely genuine. That is the truth, all of it. The Duke absorbed this. And I am Nicholas Thornton, Duke of Winterbourne. I am 30 years old. I built walls around myself to avoid being hurt or underestimated. I hired you as Mrs. Hartley expecting mediocre work. You exceeded every expectation and made me question every assumption I held about competence and gender. I developed feelings for you that crossed employer-employee boundaries. When I learned you had been lying, I felt betrayed. Not because you are Lady Rosalind, but because I thought our connection was based on honesty and discovered it was not. That is my truth. They looked at each other across his desk. Two lonely people who had hidden themselves in different ways, who had found connection despite deception, who now had to decide if truth could rebuild what lies had damaged. What do we do now? Rosalind asked. I do not know. I want to trust you again. But trust is fragile. You broke it even if you had reasons. Rebuilding will take time. I understand. Your Grace, Nicholas, I will do whatever is necessary to earn back your trust. I will stay as your housekeeper under my real name. I will be completely honest about everything. I will prove that the person you cared about was real, even if her name was false. What about your family? Your sisters? Will they not object to you working as a servant? My sisters do not care what I do. They proved that by abandoning me for 8 years. Let them object. I am done living for their approval or society's expectations. I am going to live for myself. Nicholas almost smiled. That is the woman I came to care about. Fierce. Unapologetic. Refusing to be limited by others' expectations. Very well, Lady Rosalind. You may stay. Not as Mrs. Hartley, but as yourself. We will see if we can rebuild from honest foundation. Over the following months, they did rebuild. Slowly, carefully, with Rosalind being scrupulously honest about everything. She told Nicholas about her lonely childhood, her sister's abandonment, the years of being invisible. He told her about the pressure of inheriting young, the loneliness of his position, his fear of being seen as weak. They found common ground in shared pain. Both had been lonely. Both had hidden themselves. Both had found something real in each other, despite complicated circumstances. Nicholas consulted Rosalind on business matters again, but now as Lady Rosalind rather than Mrs. Hartley. He introduced her to associates as Lady Rosalind, my estate advisor. Society found it eccentric that a duke employed a titled woman as an advisor, but Nicholas did not care. "You are the most competent person I know," he told her. "Your title does not change that. If society disapproves, that is society's problem." 8 months after the revelation, Nicholas asked Rosalind to join him in the garden. They walked in silence until they reached a secluded bench. "Lady Rosalind, may I call you Rosalind now? Please do. I am tired of formality between us. Rosalind, I need to tell you something. When I discovered your deception, I was furious, hurt, I felt manipulated. But in the months since, I have realized something important. The woman I fell in love with was not Mrs. Hartley. She was you. The real you, regardless of what name you used. Nicholas, please let me finish. You lied about your identity, yes, but everything else was true. Your intelligence, your competence, your opinions, your wit, your kindness, all of that was real. I fell in love with those qualities. The name attached to them matters far less than I thought. Are you saying you have forgiven me? I am saying I understand why you lied. I am saying that in your position, I might have made the same choice. I am saying that the months we have spent rebuilding trust have shown me who you truly are. Someone brave enough to survive abandonment, strong enough to manage an impossible situation, and honest enough to admit her mistakes. That is who I love." Rosalind felt tears stream down her face. "I love you too. I have loved you for months. Even when you hated me, I loved you. I never hated you. I was hurt. There is a difference." He took her hand. "Rosalind, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer as yourself, as Lady Rosalind Hartley, not as any role you think I expect you to fill. All right. Will you marry me? Not because it is socially appropriate or financially advantageous, but because I love you and want to spend my life with you, because you challenge me, fascinate me, make me want to be better than I am, because we are both lonely people who found something real in each other. Will you marry me?" Rosalind laughed through tears. Yes, I will marry you. Nicholas, I spent 26 years being invisible, and you finally saw me. How could I not love you? How could I not want to spend my life with you?" He kissed her then, their first kiss, built on truth rather than deception, on honesty rather than hiding. It felt like coming home after years of exile. When they broke apart, Nicholas said, "We should probably tell your sisters. They will be shocked that you are alive, employed, and now engaged to a duke. They will be appalled that I worked as a servant. Let them be appalled. I am done caring what my family thinks of me. Good, because I am marrying you, Rosalind. Not your family's approval, not society's expectations. You, exactly as you are." The engagement announcement shocked London society. Lady Rosalind Hartley, whom everyone had assumed was dead or permanently hidden in the country, was marrying the Duke of Winterbourne. More shocking, she had been employed as his housekeeper for nearly a year. The gossip was vicious. Rosalind had trapped him. She had used her position to seduce him. She was a servant pretending to be a lady. The Duke had gone mad. Rosalind's sisters appeared immediately, suddenly interested in her existence now that she was marrying a wealthy duke. Arabella arrived at Winterbourne Park uninvited, demanding to see Rosalind. "What have you done? Working as a servant? Deceiving a duke? You have made our entire family look ridiculous." Rosalind received her in the drawing room, wearing an expensive gown Nicholas had purchased, looking every inch the future Duchess. "Hello, Arabella. How kind of you to finally visit after 8 years of silence. Do not be difficult. I am here to help manage this disaster. We need to control the narrative. Perhaps we say you were secretly managing the Duke's estates as a favor, not actually employed as a servant. No, we tell the truth. I was employed as his housekeeper. I was excellent at my job. We fell in love. We are marrying. Society can think what it wishes. Rosalind, you cannot be serious. This scandal will ruin you." "Ruin me? Arabella, I have been ruined for years. Abandoned at Hartley House, forgotten by my own family, invisible to everyone who mattered. Being engaged to Nicholas is not ruin, it is salvation. But people are saying terrible things, that you manipulated him, seduced him using your position. Let them say it. Nicholas knows the truth. That is all that matters." Arabella stared at her younger sister as if seeing a stranger. "What happened to you? You were always so quiet, so compliant. Now you are defiant and unapologetic." "I was abandoned for 8 years. I survived. I discovered I did not need family approval to have worth. I found someone who values me for who I am, not for how I serve family ambitions. That changed me. I am no longer the invisible daughter you left behind. But Rosalind, family abandoned me. You did not write for months at a time. You could not recognize me when I stood in front of you at the house party. You only appeared now because I am marrying a duke. That is not family, Arabella. That is opportunism. Arabella left in offended fury. Her other sisters had similar reactions. Shock that Rosalind existed, horror at her employment as a servant, sudden interest now that she was valuable through marriage. Rosalind refused them all. You forgot me for 8 years. You do not get to claim me now. Nicholas supported her completely. Your family does not deserve you. If they cannot accept you as you are, they need not be part of our lives. The wedding was small. Immediate friends, no family beyond Nicholas's sister Henrietta, who had grown fond of Rosalind. They married in the Winterbourne Park Chapel, surrounded by the servants who had become more like family than Rosalind's actual relatives. Mr. Pemberton, the butler, walked Rosalind down the aisle. You transformed this house, my lady, and you transformed his grace. He was lonely and hard before you came. Now he is happy. That is worth more than any title or fortune. Rosalind cried through the ceremony. Nicholas cried too. Two lonely people who had found each other despite lies, despite class differences, despite every obstacle society had placed between them. When they spoke their vows, Rosalind said something unscripted. Nicholas, I promise to always be honest with you, even when honesty is hard, even when lies seem easier. You deserve truth. You deserve the real me. That is what I promise. Nicholas responded, Rosalind, I promise to always see you. Not the title, not the role, but you. The woman who transformed my estate and my life. The woman who was strong enough to survive abandonment and brave enough to love anyway. I promise to never make you feel invisible again. After the ceremony, they hosted a reception. The tenants came, the people Rosalind had helped during her time as housekeeper, who did not care about scandal or titles. They celebrated because two people they cared about had found happiness. One elderly tenant woman approached Rosalind. My lady, or should I call you your grace now, I want to thank you. When you were Mrs. Hartley, you helped my grandson when he was sick. You paid for the physician out of your own wages. You did not have to do that, but you did. That is who you are, someone who cares. That has not changed because you married a duke. Rosalind hugged her. Call me Rosalind, and I will always care. That is not dependent on my title or position. That is who I choose to be. The first year of marriage was an adjustment. Rosalind went from being invisible Lady Rosalind and then Mrs. Hartley to being the Duchess of Winterbourne. Visible, scrutinized, judged constantly. Society remained scandalized. A former servant, never mind that she was titled, marrying a duke. It was unprecedented, improper, shocking. Rosalind did not care. She had spent too many years caring what people thought. Now she focused on building the life she wanted, managing the estates with Nicholas, advising on business ventures, using her position to help people who had been overlooked as she once was. She established a charity for women in service, providing education, fair wages, protection from abusive employers. She funded schools for tenant children. She used her influence to advocate for those without voices. Nicholas supported every initiative. You were invisible for so long. Now that you are visible, you are using that visibility to help others become visible too. That is extraordinary. 2 years into their marriage, Rosalind was pregnant. The news terrified her. What if I am a terrible mother? What if I repeat the patterns of abandonment I experienced? Nicholas took her hands. You will not. You know exactly what damage abandonment causes. You will never inflict that on our child. You will be an extraordinary mother because you understand what children need. To be seen, valued, loved unconditionally. You have all of that to give. Their daughter was born on a spring morning. They named her Catherine, after Rosalind's mother, the woman who had believed in educating daughters equally, who had given Rosalind the foundation that allowed her to survive when family abandoned her. Holding Catherine, Rosalind made a vow. You will never be invisible. You will never be abandoned. You will be seen, valued, loved every day of your life. I promise you that. Nicholas added his own promise. And you will be encouraged to be yourself, whatever that self becomes. We will not limit you based on gender or expectations. You will have every opportunity to discover who you are meant to be. Catherine grew into a confident, curious child. She had access to education, opportunities, and most importantly, parents who were present, attentive, loving, everything Rosalind had lacked. When Catherine was 5, Rosalind's sister Arabella requested a visit. She had not seen Rosalind in years, having been offended by Rosalind's refusal to embrace her family after the engagement. Rosalind agreed to the visit warily. Arabella arrived with her own 2 children, beautiful but timid, clearly accustomed to being ornamental rather than valued. Catherine greeted them enthusiastically, showing them her collection of books, explaining her lessons, demonstrating her knowledge with pride. Arabella's children stared at her with confusion. Girls were not supposed to be educated or confident. During tea, Arabella observed, "You have raised Catherine very unconventionally. All that education, that confidence. People will think her strange. People thought me strange too. I survived. So will she. Arabella, I am raising my daughter to be herself, not to be what society expects. If that makes her strange, so be it. But Rosalind, she will need to marry eventually. Men do not want intelligent, confident wives. Some men do. Nicholas wanted exactly that. If Catherine's intelligence intimidates potential suitors, those suitors are not worthy of her. She will find someone who values her mind, or she will remain unmarried and accomplished. Either option is acceptable." Arabella looked genuinely baffled. "You have changed so much. The Rosalind I knew would never have been this defiant. The Rosalind you knew was abandoned and forgotten. She learned to survive without family support. That changes a person. I am no longer the invisible daughter you left at Hartley House. I am someone who knows her worth and refuses to accept less than she deserves." After Arabella left, Nicholas asked, "Do you regret anything? The years of being forgotten, the deception, the complicated path we took to get here?" Rosalind considered. "I regret the pain, the loneliness of those years at Hartley House, the deception that hurt you. But I do not regret the outcome. Everything I experienced made me who I am. The abandonment taught me strength. The invisibility taught me to see others who are overlooked. The mistakes taught me the value of honesty. I am better for all of it, even the painful parts. You are extraordinary. I knew it when you were Mrs. Hartley. I know it more now as my wife and the mother of my child. You took abandonment and transformed it into strength. That is remarkable." 5 years into their marriage, Hartley House came to Rosalind's attention again. The property had been maintained minimally by the elderly servants, but it was deteriorating. The estate could not sustain itself. Nicholas suggested selling it, but Rosalind had a different idea. "What if we transform it? Not into a family home, but into something useful, a school perhaps, for girls who are overlooked, who need education and opportunity." Nicholas loved the idea. They funded the transformation of Hartley House into a school for girls from modest backgrounds, daughters of tenants, servants, tradespeople, girls who would otherwise have no access to education. The school taught reading, writing, mathematics, science, philosophy, everything Rosalind had learned from her mother and her tutors. It also taught practical skills, household management, accounting, business principles, skills that would allow girls to be independent, capable, valuable. The school was called the Catherine Hartley Academy, named for Rosalind's mother and daughter. Its motto was simple: be seen, be valued, be yourself. 10 years into their marriage, Rosalind and Nicholas had 2 more children, a son named Thomas and another daughter named Eleanor. Their home was loud, chaotic, filled with children who were encouraged to be curious, confident themselves. Catherine, now 12, asked her mother one evening, "Mama, is it true you were once a servant? The other girls at the academy say their parents told them you worked as a housekeeper." Rosalind decided on complete honesty. "Yes, I worked as your father's housekeeper for almost a year before we married." "But why? You were Lady Rosalind. You did not need to work." "I did need to work. I had no money. Hartley House was falling apart. My family had forgotten me. When your father offered me a position, I took it because I needed to survive. And Catherine, I discovered something important during that time. I was valued more as a competent housekeeper than I had ever been as an overlooked lady. That taught me that worth is not about titles or status. It is about who you are and what you contribute. Were you not afraid of being discovered, terrified? And eventually, I was discovered, and it was complicated and painful. But your father and I worked through it because we loved each other and were committed to honesty. Catherine, the lesson is not that deception is acceptable. It is that sometimes survival requires difficult choices, and what matters is how you handle the consequences. Do you regret it? I regret the pain I caused your father through deception, but I do not regret taking the position. It taught me who I was capable of being. It gave me confidence I lacked. It led me to your father. So no, I do not regret it. Catherine absorbed this. Mama, at the academy, some girls are ashamed of their backgrounds. Their parents are servants or tradespeople. They feel less than the girls from gentle families. What do I tell them? Tell them that worth is not determined by birth. Tell them that my mother was a countess and my father was an earl, but I was still abandoned and forgotten. Tell them that I was valued more as a housekeeper than as a lady because I was competent. Tell them that titles mean nothing compared to character, intelligence, and kindness. Those are what make someone valuable. Catherine smiled. You are a good teacher, Mama. I learned from being invisible. When you are overlooked, you learn to see others who are overlooked. That is the gift abandonment gave me, empathy for those society dismisses. 15 years into their marriage, Nicholas fell ill. A lung infection that would not resolve, that gradually weakened him despite the best medical care. He was only 45, far too young to be facing mortality. Rosalind sat beside his bed day and night, managing the estates from his bedroom, refusing to leave his side. You cannot die. We have too much left to do. Catherine needs you. Thomas and Eleanor need you. I need you. Nicholas smiled weakly. Rosalind, if I die, you will be fine. You survived abandonment. You survived invisibility. You built a life from nothing. You are the strongest person I know. I do not want to be strong without you. Nicholas, you saw me when no one else did. You valued me when my own family forgot me. How do I survive losing you? The same way you survived everything else, by refusing to be diminished, by continuing to build to help others, to be yourself unapologetically. Rosalind, my greatest pride is not my title or my wealth. It is you. The woman who was abandoned and transformed that abandonment into strength. The woman who made one mistake, lying about her identity, and then spent years proving her genuine character. You are extraordinary. Death does not change that. Do not talk about death. You are going to recover. But Nicholas did not recover. He died peacefully 3 weeks later, holding Rosalind's hand, surrounded by his children. His last words were, "Thank you for being brave enough to take that position. Thank you for being yourself, even when yourself was complicated. Thank you for 15 years of extraordinary partnership. You transformed my life, Rosalind. Never forget your worth." The funeral was enormous. Nicholas had been beloved by his tenants, his business associates, the community. But the most moving tribute came from the students at the Rosalind Hartley Academy, who created a memorial describing how the Duke and Duchess had given them opportunities they never would have had otherwise. One girl spoke at the memorial. "The Duchess understands us. She knows what it means to be overlooked, dismissed, assumed incompetent because of who you are. She created this school because she remembers being invisible. She uses her visibility now to help us become visible. That is her gift to us. Not money or opportunity, though those matter, but the belief that we are worthy of being seen. Thank you, Your Grace, for seeing us." Rosalind cried through the entire memorial. These girls, overlooked, dismissed, assumed to have no potential, were exactly who she had been, and now she could give them what she had desperately needed, the assurance that they mattered. After the funeral, Rosalind had to decide what to do. She was only 41, widowed, with 3 children. Society expected her to retreat into respectable mourning, perhaps remarry eventually, but Rosalind had different plans. She threw herself into expanding the academy, establishing more schools in other locations, creating opportunities for overlooked girls across England. She managed the Winterbourne estates with the same competence she had shown as Mrs. Hartley 15 years earlier. She became known as the Duchess, who refused to be merely decorative, who used her position to create change, who remembered being forgotten and ensured others would not be. 5 years after Nicholas's death, Catherine, now 20, asked to help manage the academy. "Mama, I want to continue what you and Papa built. I want to help girls who are overlooked, just as you were helped by taking that position as housekeeper." Rosalind felt tears of pride. "You understand. You see why this matters." "Of course I understand. You raised me to see people who are invisible to others, to value competence over status, to believe that everyone deserves to be seen. That is your legacy, Mama. Not your title or your wealth, but your insistence that overlooked people matter. Together, mother and daughter expanded the network of schools. By the time Catherine was 30, there were 15 Catherine Hartley academies across England, educating hundreds of girls who would otherwise have no opportunities. 10 years after Nicholas's death, Rosalind was invited to speak at a women's education conference in London. She was 51, still managing the Winterbourne estates, still expanding the schools, still refusing to fade into respectable widowhood. She spoke about her own experience. I was abandoned by my family at 18, left alone to manage a failing estate with no support, no resources, no hope. I was invisible, forgotten. Society assumed I had died or disappeared. My own sisters could not recognize me when I stood in front of them. Then I made a mistake. A duke offered me a position as his housekeeper, and I accepted without correcting his assumption that I was a servant. I lied about my identity. I lived as Mrs. Hartley for nearly a year, while actually being Lady Rosalind. That mistake taught me something important. I was valued more as a competent servant than I had ever been as an overlooked lady. Society's hierarchy is broken when someone is worth more without their title than with it, she continued. Eventually, the truth emerged. My husband was hurt by the deception, and rightfully so. But we worked through it because we built our relationship on honesty after the initial lie. We proved that mistakes, even significant ones, can be overcome if both people commit to genuine partnership. What I learned from that experience is this: being overlooked is not a character flaw. Being abandoned is not a personal failing. Being invisible is not evidence of your lack of worth. It is evidence of society's failure to see value where it exists. Every girl in the Catherine Hartley academies is someone society has overlooked. Daughters of servants, tradespeople, tenant farmers. Girls who would normally receive no education, no opportunities, no chance to be themselves. We are giving them what I desperately needed at their age, the assurance that they are valuable, capable, worthy of being seen. That is my legacy. Not that I was abandoned and survived. Not that I lied and was forgiven, but that I took my own experience of invisibility and transformed it into visibility for others. That is what I challenge all of you to do. Take your pain and transform it into purpose. Take your wounds and use them to help heal others. Take your experience of being overlooked and use your visibility, however you achieve it, to help others become visible. We have been invisible long enough. It is time for all of us to be seen. The speech was met with standing ovation. Women, many of whom had experienced their own forms of abandonment and invisibility, found hope in Rosalind's story. If she could survive being forgotten and build something extraordinary, perhaps they could too. After the conference, a young woman approached Rosalind. "Your Grace, I am currently working as a governess. I am educated, competent, but overlooked because of my position. Your story gives me hope that I can be more than society expects. How did you find the courage to take that position, knowing it meant lying about who you were?" Rosalind thought carefully. "I did not feel courageous. I felt desperate. But sometimes desperation forces us to make choices we would not otherwise make. Was it the right choice? I do not know. It caused pain, required years of rebuilding trust, but it also gave me opportunities I never would have had as overlooked Lady Rosalind. I learned I was capable of far more than I thought. My advice to you is this: do not lie about who you are, but do not let others define your worth based on their limited vision. You are more than your current position. You have value beyond what society acknowledges. Find ways to demonstrate that value. Build on your competence. And when opportunities arise, even imperfect opportunities, consider taking them. Sometimes the path to being seen requires taking risks. The young woman thanked her and left. Rosalind wondered if she would take a risk, if she would find her own path to visibility. 15 years after Nicholas's death, Rosalind was 61. Her children were grown, Catherine running the Academy network, Thomas managing the Winterbourne estates, Eleanor working in Parliament advocating for women's education rights. Rosalind had accomplished more than she had ever imagined possible, but she still carried the scars of abandonment, still remembered the years of being invisible, still felt the pain of family who had forgotten her. One day she received a letter from Arabella. Her eldest sister was dying and wanted to see her. Rosalind debated whether to go. Arabella had abandoned her for 8 years, then appeared only when Rosalind became valuable through marriage. Did she deserve a final visit? But Nicholas's voice echoed in her memory. Choose the person you want to be, not the person others have made you. Rosalind went. She found Arabella in her London townhouse, frail and elderly, surrounded by her own grown children who barely knew their aunt. Rosalind, you came. I was not certain you would. Neither was I. Arabella, why did you want to see me? To apologize. For abandoning you, for forgetting you existed, for only appearing when you became valuable through marriage. Rosalind, I have been a terrible sister. I realize that now, facing death. I want you to know, I am sorry, deeply, genuinely sorry. Rosalind looked at the woman who had been her sister, but never her ally. Why did you forget me, Arabella? What did I do to deserve that? Nothing. You did nothing. You were just different. Plain where we were beautiful. Scholarly where we were social. I did not know how to relate to you, so I ignored you. That was easier than trying to understand you. Rosalind, that was my failure, not yours. You were never the problem. I was. Yes, you were. Arabella, do you have any idea what those 8 years at Hartley House were like? Completely alone, managing an impossible situation, forgotten by everyone who should have cared. I thought I would die there, invisible and unmourned. But you did not die. You thrived. You became extraordinary. Rosalind, I watched your life from a distance. The schools you built, the changes you created, the way you transformed invisibility into influence. I am proud of you. I know I have no right to claim pride in someone I abandoned, but I am proud nonetheless. Rosalind felt complicated emotions, anger for the abandonment, sadness for the lost relationship, grudging appreciation for the apology. I forgive you, Arabella, not because you deserve it, but because I am tired of carrying anger. But I want you to understand, forgiveness does not mean forgetting. I will always remember being abandoned. That shaped who I became. I understand. And Rosalind, I want you to know, your schools, your work with overlooked girls, that matters. You took your pain and transformed it into something that helps others. That is extraordinary. I wasted my life on social climbing and empty pursuits. You built something real. I envy you that. Arabella died 2 weeks later. At the funeral, Rosalind discovered that Arabella had left money in her will to the Catherine Hartley Academy, a substantial sum that would fund 3 new schools. She remembered you in the end, Catherine observed. She tried to make amends. Yes, but it does not undo the years of abandonment. It is simply acknowledgement that she was wrong. That matters, but it does not erase history. 20 years after Nicholas's death, Rosalind was 71. The Catherine Hartley Academy network had expanded to 30 schools across England and Scotland. Thousands of girls had been educated, given opportunities, helped to become visible. Rosalind was invited to speak at the opening of a new school in Scotland. She travelled there with Catherine, now 45, and managing the entire academy network. At the opening ceremony, a young teacher, a former student from one of the first academies, approached Rosalind. Your Grace, I wanted to thank you. I was a tenant farmer's daughter. No one thought I had potential. The academy educated me, believed in me, gave me opportunities I never would have had. Now I teach others like me. That is your legacy. Generations of girls who would have been invisible now seen and valued. Rosalind embraced her. No, it is our legacy. You took the opportunity and built something with it. That is what matters. Not that I created schools, but that students like you used education to transform your lives and help others. During her speech at the opening, Rosalind reflected on her journey. I stand before you at 71, looking back at a life that began in invisibility and abandonment. I was the daughter no one wanted, the sister everyone forgot, the woman society dismissed as unmarriageable and incompetent. I could have remained invisible, could have accepted abandonment as my fate, could have lived out my life in that crumbling house, forgotten and unmourned. But a single mistake changed everything. A duke mistook me for a servant and offered me a position. I accepted, even though it meant lying about who I was. That mistake led to employment, which led to recognition, which led to love, which led to partnership, which led to these schools. I do not celebrate the mistake itself. Deception is wrong, even with good intentions. But I celebrate what came from it. The discovery that I had value beyond my title, competence beyond what society acknowledged, strength I did not know I possessed. Every girl educated in these schools is someone society has overlooked. But we see you. We know you have potential, intelligence, capabilities that deserve development. We are giving you the tools to become visible on your own terms. You will face people who dismiss you, who assume you have no value because of your background or gender or class. Do not accept their judgment. Prove them wrong through your competence. Build lives that reflect your actual capabilities, not society's limited expectations. And when you achieve success, when you become visible, remember those who remain invisible. Use your visibility to help others become seen. That is how we transform society. One visible woman at a time, each reaching back to help others forward. The applause was thunderous. Rosalind looked at the sea of young faces, girls who would have been forgotten, who were now being given chances to become themselves, and felt profound satisfaction. She had been abandoned, but she had survived. She had been invisible, but she had found ways to become seen, and now she was using her visibility to help others who were overlooked, dismissed, assumed to have no potential. That was worth everything. The pain of abandonment, the years of invisibility, even the mistake of deception that had started it all. After the ceremony, Catherine asked, "Mama, do you have regrets? About anything?" Rosalind considered. "I regret the pain I caused your father through deception. I regret the years I wasted accepting abandonment instead of fighting against it earlier. But I do not regret the journey. Everything I experienced, even the painful parts, made me who I am. And I like who I am. I am proud of what we have built. Papa would be proud too. He would see what you have accomplished and know that his initial mistake, offering you that position, led to all of this. Yes, one mistake. His mistake of seeing Mrs. Hartley as capable when he had dismissed Lady Rosalind as incompetent. My mistake of accepting under false pretenses. Two mistakes that somehow led to extraordinary outcomes. Life is strange that way." Rosalind lived another 4 years, actively managing the Academy network until the very end. She died peacefully at 75, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, secure in the knowledge that her work would continue. At her funeral, thousands gathered. Former students, teachers, tenants, business associates, everyone whose life she had touched. They told stories of the Duchess who remembered being invisible, who used her visibility to help others become seen. Catherine gave the eulogy. "My mother was abandoned at 18, left alone to manage a failing estate while her family forgot she existed. She was invisible, overlooked, dismissed as having no value. Then a single mistake changed everything. A duke mistook her for a servant. She accepted the position without correcting his assumption. For nearly a year, she lived as someone else, not because she was ashamed of who she was, but because who she was had never been valued. Eventually the truth emerged. It was painful, complicated, required years of rebuilding trust. But my parents worked through it because they built their relationship on honesty after the initial deception. My mother's legacy is not the mistake. It is what she built after the mistake. She took her experience of being invisible and transformed it into visibility for thousands of girls who would otherwise have remained overlooked. She taught us that abandonment is not destiny, that being overlooked is not evidence of your lack of worth, but evidence of others' failure to see. That mistakes, even significant ones, can lead to extraordinary outcomes if you commit to growth and honesty after. Most importantly, she taught us to see people who are invisible to others, to value those society dismisses, to believe that everyone deserves to be seen, recognized, given opportunities to become themselves. That is the Duchess of Winterbourne's legacy. Not her title or wealth, but her insistence that overlooked people matter, that invisibility can be overcome, that one person's visibility can help create visibility for thousands. Mama, you were abandoned and forgotten, but you refused to remain invisible. You built something extraordinary from pain and overlooking. Thank you for showing us that being seen is not a privilege. It is a right we must claim for ourselves and help others claim for themselves." 25 years after Rosalind's death, the Catherine Hartley Academy network had expanded globally. 50 schools across England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales. Partnerships with similar schools in America and Australia. Thousands of women educated who would otherwise have had no opportunities. A great-granddaughter of Rosalind's, also named Rosalind, was appointed head of the entire academy network at age 30. She had grown up hearing stories of her famous ancestor, the Duchess who was abandoned and transformed that abandonment into purpose. On the 100th anniversary of the first academy's founding, Rosalind, the younger, gave a speech at Hartley House, which had been preserved as a historical site and school. 100 years ago, a woman named Rosalind Hartley lived here. She was abandoned by her family, forgotten by society, dismissed as having no value. She managed this crumbling estate alone for years, invisible to everyone who mattered. Then, a duke made a mistake. He offered her a position as his housekeeper, thinking she was a poor relation. She accepted without correcting his assumption. She lied about her identity because she desperately needed the income and the opportunity to be valued for her competence rather than dismissed for her appearance. That mistake, that lie, was wrong. My ancestor knew it was wrong, even as she committed to it. But she also knew it was her only chance to be seen, and she took it. Eventually, the truth emerged. It was painful. Her husband felt betrayed. But they worked through it because they built their relationship on honesty after the initial deception. They proved that mistakes can be overcome if both people commit to genuine partnership and truth. My ancestor's story is not a celebration of deception. It is a testament to the resilience of overlooked people. It is proof that being invisible does not mean you lack worth. It is evidence that sometimes survival requires difficult choices. And what matters is how you handle the consequences of those choices. The Catherine Hartley Academy Network exists because one woman refused to remain invisible, because she took her pain and transformed it into purpose, because she remembered being overlooked and used her eventual visibility to help others become seen. Every student educated here is someone society might have dismissed. Every teacher working here is proving that overlooked people can become leaders. Every school in this network is a reminder that invisibility can be overcome. That is our founder's legacy. Not that she was perfect, she was not. Not that she never made mistakes, she made a significant one. But that she survived abandonment, refused to remain invisible, and built something that continues helping overlooked people become visible 100 years after she took that initial risk. So today, on this 100th anniversary, I challenge all of you. Who in your life is invisible? Who is overlooked, dismissed, assumed to have no potential? What can you do to help them become seen? My ancestor could not change the society that abandoned her, but she could create spaces where overlooked girls were valued. She could build schools that saw potential where others saw limitations. She could transform her own invisibility into visibility for thousands. That is the power each of us has, not to change entire societies immediately, but to help individual people become seen, to recognize value where others miss it, to create opportunities for those society has dismissed. One person at a time, we change the world. One overlooked girl given education and opportunity becomes a teacher who helps other overlooked girls. One invisible woman, finally seen and valued, creates spaces where others can be seen and valued. That is the Catherine Hartley legacy. That is our work. That is our purpose. We are all descendants of someone who was overlooked. We all carry the memory of being invisible in some way. What we do with that memory, whether we use it to help others or whether we perpetuate the patterns that hurt us, that is what defines us. My ancestor chose to help others, to transform pain into purpose, to insist that overlooked people matter. What will you choose? The speech was met with tears and applause. Young women, students from the academy, stood and shared their own stories of being overlooked, of finding value through education, of becoming visible when society had tried to keep them invisible. And in that moment, standing in Hartley House where her ancestor had spent 8 years forgotten and alone, young Rosalind understood something profound. Abandonment could become legacy. Invisibility could become influence. Mistakes could become meaning. Her ancestor had been abandoned and forgotten. But she had survived. She had built. She had helped thousands of women become visible who would otherwise have remained overlooked. That was the gift of being abandoned. You learned to see others who were abandoned. That was the gift of being invisible. You learned to recognize others who were invisible. That was the gift of making mistakes. You learned to offer grace to others who made mistakes. Pain became purpose. Suffering became service. Abandonment became advocacy. That was the real story of Lady Rosalind Hartley, the Duchess of Winterbourne. Not that she was abandoned and survived, but that she was abandoned and transformed that abandonment into a legacy that continued helping overlooked people become visible more than a century after her death. She had been forgotten by her family, but she was remembered by thousands of women whose lives she had changed. She had been invisible to society, but she became permanently visible through her work. And that transformation of abandonment into legacy, of invisibility into influence, of mistakes into meaning, that was the greatest success of all.